Gentlemen, how we doing? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking X Factors in NHL 24. So specifically what I wanted to cover today is players that I think deserve an X Factor card in NHL 24 that did not have one in NHL 23. I guess first things first is we should say that who knows how many X Factor cards there's going to be in NHL 24. I'm just going to assume for the sake of this video that there will be X Factor cards in NHL 24. We're getting an X Factor edition of the game, so I feel it makes sense. Now let's start with taking a look back at the last couple of games that had X Factor cards. In NHL 23, we had 28 NHL players who had an X Factor card. Before that in NHL 22, that number was all the way up to 50. So who knows how many cards we're going to get in NHL 24? Who knows if they're going to work the same? Most likely they're going to be similar. I would love to see them change it, make them maybe even a little bit better. I'd be okay with them being more rare if they were just better. Like, give us the ability to change the gold abilities and the synergies and whatnot on the cards. I think that'd be kind of cool. So first things first, we're going to go over some of the options they gave us in that fan vote thing. That has now closed, but I want to run down the list and talk about the players who EA decided to give us as options for the highest overall in the game, because I feel like that gives us some insight on how they view these players. After that, I'll finish with a few more players that were not in that list that I think deserve an X Factor card in NHL 24. These players did not have an X Factor card in NHL 23, and they were options for the highest overall at their respective positions for NHL 24 for that fan vote that they already did. So starting at left wing, we have Robertson and Marchand. I believe Marchand had an X Factor in NHL 22, but did not have one last year. I could definitely see Robertson getting one for 24. At center, Tage Thompson. To me, that's a no-brainer. He should definitely have an X Factor card in NHL 24. That build is super fun to use in NHL 23. Who knows what the meta will be like in NHL 24. It's hard to ignore size and skill like Tage Thompson, so he could be an X Factor worth chasing. At right wing, another player who had a tremendous season last year in the NHL is Mikko Rantanen. I could definitely see him getting an X Factor for NHL 24. We got three players now on the left-hand side that would have new X Factors if they were to get one next year. That is Rasmus Dahlin, Quinn Hughes, Miro Heiskanen. I could see a couple of those guys getting some for sure. And on the right side, we have Mr. Norris, Erik Karlsson. He had a tremendous season last year, but the few before that weren't so great. So who knows? Maybe he gets one. I feel like he should get one for NHL 24 since last year was just so tremendous, and he has had success before getting, a bunch of injuries and whatnot, where he already won a Norris way back when, right? And then they also got Charlie McAvoy, who is consistently in like the top 5 to 10 votes when you see best defenseman in the league. So I could definitely see him getting an X Factor card as well. For goalies, they had a few options. They had Vasilij Shesterkin, who obviously did have X Factors in NHL 23, but then they also had Hellebuck and Sorokin, a couple of players that came to mind when I started making my list. And then one that I didn't really think of, but I guess it makes sense, is Ullmark. He had a tremendous year last year in front of behind a really good team. The longevity might not be there in terms of that elite skill, but certainly one really good year last year. Who knows what they're going to do with goalies. Last year, they only had 3 goalies. That was Vasilij, that was Shesterkin, and somehow Markstrom got an X Factor and ended up being one of the best cards in the game. So I could definitely see some of these players, if not most of them, getting X Factor cards in NHL 24. But again, I guess it just really depends on how many overall cards that they're going to have as X Factors. Last but not least, I want to talk about some NHL players that were not a part of this fan vote, but I feel they definitely deserve an X Factor card in NHL 24. And at the top of my list, I have the 50 goal scorer, Mr. Brayden Point. I might be a little biased. He is on my Lightning, who I cheer for. But 50 goals, man. He had an X Factor card in NHL 22. What he's done in the playoffs the last few years, the speed, the goal scoring ability, dynamite. He definitely deserves an X Factor. And next up, we got Jack Hughes. Again, dominant year from him last year. I think he's definitely getting an X Factor in NHL 24. A couple more forwards that come to mind is Jack Eichel, who had an X Factor in NHL 22. Did not have one in 23, but he just put together a pretty great season coming off that injury, and obviously he won the Stanley Cup. And our last skater today that I could see having an X Factor in NHL 24, Elias Patterson. He had a great year. He did also have an X Factor in NHL 22, but did not have one in NHL 23. I could see him getting one again for NHL 24. And then we got a couple goalies here. I could see Saros and Ottinger kind of being in the discussion at the very least for getting an X-Factor card in NHL 24. All right, gentlemen, that's going to do it for me today. Go ahead and let me know in the comments if I missed anyone that you think deserves an X-Factor card in NHL 24. Please drop a like on the video if you enjoyed and if you want to see more NHL 24 content. I'm thinking maybe we make another X-Factor video for NHL 24, kind of predicting cards that did have an X-Factor card in NHL 23 that we think maybe won't in NHL 24. Cough, cough, Markstrom. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one.